Hello, welcome to lesson 3-3 for today's date, which is 1-19, 1-17 rather. Please take a moment to pause here and read through the screen that you see in front of you. Please complete the do now. When you are done with the do now, please raise your hand so I can come over and check it. At this point, hopefully you have finished the do now. Before I start, if you are from class 803, here are the following expectations for you as you complete this video lesson. One, you are expected to only interact with your laptop and teacher, no other student. So until small group time, you should not be talking to anybody else. You should be taking all notes and completing all do nows as you're instructed to do before time runs out. Please make sure to look at the timer up on the board. If you have a question, raise your hand. If I am busy, put your question into the parking lot. The parking lot is the whiteboard where it says parking lot. Please put your name and the question that you have. Please don't feel the need to write out a huge long question, but keep it as short as possible so that you can return to your seat and continue to work until I get back to you. Please continue to work until I can get you. Please don't sit there and wait for me. Please continue to work. To get your name on the recognition board, you must not talk to any other student until small group time and complete all parts of the video. And you need to follow the new seating chart that is posted up on the board. For this first day, you should have a post-it note with your name on it. Please make sure to sit in that seat with your post-it note on that seat. And make sure not to be on any other websites. You may not listen to Spotify or YouTube during this. You should be listening to the video and taking notes. You cannot be using any streaming website. And if you continue to use streaming sites, you will be unable to take part in this virtual class, which means you're just not taking part in class. So, as we talk about the Alien Sedition Acts today, building off of what we talked about last week, looking at how political parties create divisions in our nation, one of the big issues that's going to be dividing the nation is how political parties feel about immigrants. Looking at these three questions, I want you to think to yourself, do I agree with this, disagree with this, or am I neutral? Do I not really care? The first one, Americans should have the right to criticize their government at all times because the First Amendment guarantees a right to free speech with few restrictions. How do you feel about that? Agree, disagree, or neutral? Should all immigrants residing in the United States have the exact same rights as American citizens? Do you agree, disagree, or do you feel neutral on this and not have an opinion? And during times of war, the government can do whatever is necessary to protect the American people as they have ultimate power. Do you agree with this? Disagree with it? Not have an idea? At the time of the Alien Sedition Acts, which we'll be studying today, there was a deal of disagreement in the two parties. The Democratic Republicans and the Federalists both had different opinions on how immigrants should be treated, specifically French immigrants. Well, why French immigrants? Well, before we get into that, I want you to jot down these two quick definitions in your notes. Flip to your notes at this time and please fill in the blanks. Pause your screen now to fill in the blanks. So, as you've written down, an alien is somebody who's from another nation. Yes, we often think of green men coming out of UFOs, but also aliens are people from another country. Sedition is any kind of criticism or fighting against the government. And so sedition cannot doesn't just mean like you're actively getting weapons and trying to fight the government, but it can also at this time is considered just wanting to disagree with the government. And so aliens and sedition are going to be the two things that people are talking about at this time period. So the French had their own revolution after our American Revolution. So we have the American Revolution in 1776, and about 20 years later, while we're signing the Constitution, the French are also having a revolution. We had a much more peaceful resolution with Great Britain. We separated ourselves, but we didn't burn the country to the ground. In France, they decapitated their king, they murdered his family. It was very dramatic, it was very controversial. And as this is going on, the French are basically telling other countries, "You're either with us or against us." And the United States starts to have a lot of growing tension with France because we're not really sure what we want our position to be. And John Adams has just been elected president. He does not really want to have war with the French, but he also does feel like he needs to prepare the country. He starts to crack down on anyone that questions the government and removes French citizens from the country. Does this through a series of laws called the Alien Sedition Act. Please pause the video here to add the Alien Sedition Act definition to your notes. The Alien Sedition Acts were a series of laws that basically gave the power of the government to deport non-citizens. That means they can take somebody who's not a citizen of the United States and they can just kick them out of the country if they want to, send them back to wherever they came from. Specifically, they're focusing on citizens who are non-citizens who are questioning the government. They also just made it illegal for anybody to question the government in general. The Sedition Act, saying you can't rebel against the government. They said sedition is anything that criticizes the government. We're on the brink of war. We're about to go to war. We're worried. If you're criticizing the government, you're going to be helping France. So no one's allowed to criticize the government. And John Adams, a Federalist, he is supported by the Federalists in this because they're in charge right at the time. And they're like, yeah, we don't want anybody criticizing us. The Democratic Republicans, who are doing the criticizing, are saying, how can you make this illegal for us? Like, we are against this law. So the Alien Sedition Acts are incredibly controversial. Um, it's a good example of how war kind of pushes us. I remember in my early, I was 6 years old when 9/11 happened. And after 9/11, George W. Bush, our president, who you can see here, said we need to limit freedom. And he passed a law called the Patriot Act. It allowed him and his government to spy on U.S. citizens. It allowed him to listen into our phone calls, read our emails without warrants, without us knowing. And it was done to protect us from terrorism, to protect us from any dangers there might be. We had to give up our freedoms in exchange for safety. And that was very controversial and still is very controversial today. So at this time, you've taken all your notes, you've done your do now. I want you to now get ready for your small group activity. By now, the timer is probably coming down to its last few minutes, so make sure to take a moment and look at what small group you are in. Before you're not going to go to your small group yet. At this time, you're going to raise your hand, and I'm going to come over and hand you the paper for your group. Make sure to tell me what paper you need, which group you're in. So, for this assignment, what you are going to be doing is you have two readings. You have one primary source that is the Alien Act, an act having to do with aliens, people from other countries. As you read through this, I want you to answer the analysis questions using the first act about aliens and the second act about sedition, because it's Alien and Sedition Acts. There are multiple acts, there are multiple laws that are getting passed. As you read about these laws, I want you to answer these questions thinking about, are these laws reasonable? Why do you think they're passed? Why do you think people are getting upset about this? Do you think people would be happy about this or angry about this? As you think about that, please take some time to answer these questions in your small group. When the timer runs out, I will move you to your small groups. All right, thank you very much.